Hello, friends. Welcome to Lead to Gold. This is the podcast devoted to discussing all things growth and wellness. And I am so happy that you're here for episode 43, I think. This is coming out end of July, which is so crazy. I just cannot believe how fast the summer is going. I live in Virginia, which has been in a massive heat wave for probably the past month and a half, maybe 2 months, and it is finally subsiding, which feels kind of weird because I usually associate that with the end of summer. And lo and behold, it's not quite the end of summer, but it's starting to feel that way. I am a school teacher, so typically mid-August is when I head back, and we are already getting pretty close to that time. So my goodness. Hopefully summer lasts a little bit longer for you wherever you are. But yeah, I'm a little bit bittersweet on that already. And just as we're getting into today's episode, this also brings me to a tiny little update that I have. Maybe it's not so tiny. I don't know. You decide. But last year around this time when I was going back to school, I decided to pre-record several episodes just because getting back into a new school year is always very time consuming and can get a little hectic and chaotic. So I kind of set a boundary for myself to be like, okay, we're going to knock out a couple of episodes, get some good amount through the school year, and then I'll kind of pick it back up live. So something similar is happening this go around, but it's not exactly the same. It's a little bit more substantial. I am officially ending the podcast for the season, not for good, but for the season at episode 50, which is going to air, I believe, the day before the election, which is so ironic. All of that to say, I just wanted to kind of give everybody a heads up that Lead to Gold, the podcast, will be on hiatus from November of 2024 until, I don't know, further notice, probably quite a bit later in 2025. I am expecting a pretty decently sized break, maybe 9 months, maybe a year. I don't know. But nothing's definitive yet. I just wanted to say that the hiatus itself, the end of season 1, is definitely going to happen. And episode 50, if I have done my calculations correctly, that will be the day before the election in 2024. So, oh boy. I won't get into that right now, but anyway, what I will get into is the episode. Really quick before all of that, the usual podcast stuff. If you enjoy what we talk about here, maybe you've listened to a couple episodes before and you're digging it, it would mean the world to me if you would take a moment to rate the show wherever you're listening. Any platform that allows it. It definitely helps other people to find the show. And you know what else helps people find the show is if you share it with them. If you have a friend that you think would like the conversations we have here, please feel free to share it. Share it on your social medias, DM a friend, text a friend, be like, hey, I listened to this and I thought of you. Any and all things helps. But I really, really would appreciate it if you feel called to do so. Beyond that, Lead to Gold is not just a podcast. It is also a blog. So if you really like the things we talk about here and you want a little bit more of it in the form of writing, I post blog posts every other Monday. So over here on the podcast, it's every other Monday. Over there on the blog, it is every adjacent Monday. So if you're really in the Lead to Gold space, you are getting something from me every single Monday. And the last thing I will say is, if you want to stay up to date, if you want to get a couple extra little goodies like a seasonal, monthly, exclusive Spotify playlist, you can subscribe to my email list. I only email once a month. It's not spammy. It's just kind of like cutesy and like, hey, how are we doing? What's the vibe? Here's a playlist for you. So if you're into that, you can find all of the links for all of the things in the show notes. And thank you for just being here. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's get into the episode. Today we are talking about reciprocity. Ooh, a vocab word, which is like one of my favorite things to talk about because I'm an English teacher. Hee hee. Today we are talking about reciprocity, and if you don't know what that means, don't worry because I am going to give you a definition. We are going to break it down. We are going to talk about why this is coming up for me, but also I think for a lot of people right now. And maybe if you don't feel this in your life, I'm going to hopefully try to convince you that you should be feeling this in your life because it's very important. And in such a tumultuous election cycle, and that's not all that is tumultuous right now, as we hopefully very well know, we need each other. We need each other. And if you've been keeping up with some of the things that I've been talking about recently, I feel like I'm really, really, really honing in on the aspect of community in Led to Gold. This is something that I have always wanted this online space to be, but I'm starting to realize that creating an online community can be quite difficult because online is not really communal. It doesn't really facilitate that well. It's very difficult unless you have a ton of followers, which I do not. And that's besides the point. But what I'm hoping to cultivate here is a place where people can discuss what makes them feel good about their lives, what makes them light up in life, what gets them through hard times, because again, we are in some pretty hard, scary times right now. And that is the ultimate goal. If I can provide a space for people to have conversations about that, for people to question that and grow in that process, then I have done my job. Something that has occurred to me more recently, though, is the necessity for facilitating this in person, because I can blab on Instagram all I want. I can make a podcast all I want to an audience that may or may not grow over time. I hope it does, but that, again, is besides the point. The most important thing for me right now is really practicing what I preach. And I've been preaching a lot lately about community care, but I haven't really been doing all that I can to match that energy. Pretty much everything that has been circulating in the news lately is fear-based. And I am an anxious person by nature. I am very prone to fear. And it's just been a lot, you know. I think I'm certainly not the only person in that position at this point in time. As I've said many times, it's a scary world right now. But something that tends to alleviate that fear is understanding that there is something that we can do about it. And understanding, more importantly, that there are other people, likely very close to you, who want to feel safer, less afraid, and held in community. So that's ultimately what we are getting into today, but there are a lot of aspects to the conversation around reciprocity. So before I get too in the weeds and like kind of jumble around my thoughts, I want to start with where this idea came from for me, how I learned about reciprocity, and from there, how I'm seeing it show up more and more in my life the more that I pay attention to it, which is really the key here. So maybe you've heard of the book Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Maybe you haven't, but I am here to tell you that it is the most beautiful book I have read in a very long time, probably since The Overstory, which I read back in 2021, I want to say. And this has been a beacon of light in an otherwise kind of heat domey, kind of anxious, kind of ragey summer for me. And that's not to say that the summer has been bad. It certainly has not been all bad. I've just definitely been kind of focused in on these like heat wave vibes. I don't know how else to put that, but Braiding Sweetgrass is like a cool breeze in a shady meadow to the Virginia dry, crackly heat wave that we've been having. And if you haven't heard of this book, I'll just read you the front cover. It is Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. And on the back cover, as a botanist, Robin Wall Kimmerer has been trained to ask questions of nature with the tools of science. As a member of the citizen Potawatomi Nation, she embraces the notion that plants and animals are our oldest teachers. In Braiding Sweetgrass, Kimmerer brings these lenses of knowledge together to show that the awakening of a wider ecological consciousness requires the acknowledgement and celebration of our reciprocal relationship with the rest of the living world. For only when we can hear the languages of other beings are we capable of understanding the generosity of the earth and learning to give our own gifts in return. So, that's a lot for a really small explanation of the text, but I do think it paints a pretty good picture of what Kimmerer attempts to do throughout this book. And it is very true. It kind of weaves back and forth like a braid of scientific knowledge and getting really into the nitty gritty of plant names and scientific names. But then it gets really spiritual, and then it goes back to stories about her children and stories about her upbringing and stories about the native cultures that she was surrounded by. It's beautiful. So all of this to say, I am learning about reciprocity through this book. And I was just looking back through some of the annotations that I made, not for this episode by any means, but just for my own benefit. And it was interesting because I really didn't make a lot in the first 100 or so pages of the book. I think it took me a little while to get into, but a lot of things struck me when I got to a certain chapter called The Allegiance to Gratitude. And this coincided with a really interesting moment in my own personal life where I was at a family dinner. It was going really well. It was really sweet until my family kind of started doing the stereotypical family dinner thing, when you haven't seen anybody for a while and then somebody starts getting political and then the whole conversation just down spirals into chaos, and it was not super great. The long story short of that is that my mom was upset because the courthouse that she works in, they're no longer allowed to say the Pledge of Allegiance. The debate around that conversation isn't really important, but what is important and what struck me is that the very next day I was reading this book and I came along a pretty long chapter called Allegiance to Gratitude, where Kimmerer kind of dives into and shows us an outline of a native Pledge of Allegiance. So it's not an allegiance to the flag, as we all have learned in the US. Every single school day we do this. Instead, it is gratitude toward all living things. And it's quite long. She even talks in this chapter for a bit about how sometimes other people who are not native, who have to hear this and quote unquote sit through it, tend to start getting bored. They roll their eyes, they check their phone because it's lengthy. However, when you read it, makes so much more sense to pledge allegiance and pledge gratitude to living things than to a flag. Regardless, this is the chapter that really initiated the conversation around reciprocity. So I wanted to read a little section to you. And this is on page 115. Cultures of gratitude must also be cultures of reciprocity. Each person, human or no, is bound to every other in a reciprocal relationship. Just as all beings have a duty to me, I have a duty to them. If an animal gives its life to feed me, I am in turn bound to support its life. If I receive a stream's gift of pure water, then I am responsible for returning a gift in kind. An integral part of a human's education is to know those duties and how to perform them. In short, the definition for reciprocity is mutual dependence. And the idea behind it, not just in this book, but in general, is that we as humans, as social creatures, depend on one another for survival. This really shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. We all know this, but do we really actively, presently practice it? I would say we probably don't. Now, to take that even further, as Kimmerer does so beautifully in this book, is also the notion that it's not just a human to human thing. It is a human to life thing. It is a human to all living things and all living things to human. And I'll, again, break this down in a little bit more detail in just a few minutes, but hopefully that somewhat paints a picture. Reciprocity is dependence from one being to another. Now, before we go into the 5 reasons why we all need to practice reciprocity, I want to also just very quickly touch on one thing that she mentions in this section, which is the example of if I get pure water from a stream, then I need to give something back to that stream in return. And sometimes we're very literal in our human brains. When I first came across this, I was like, well, what could you give back to a stream? And sometimes this can be quite literal. Sometimes it's like you are literally bringing an offering to the stream. You are letting the stream know of your presence. This is something that she speaks on quite a lot, and especially in her native culture, there is a practice of, she mentions, I think it was her uncle, pouring coffee grounds out onto the ground every morning before really fully getting the day started. It was almost like his morning routine. And to a lot of us who don't necessarily have native, really deep-rooted rituals like that, we might read that and go, okay, well, what's the big deal about pouring coffee grounds onto the ground? Like, what is that actually doing? In the physical sense, it's probably not doing much, but in a spiritual sense, that is his offering to the world. And as he's doing it, he's saying thanks. He's giving thanks for all of the things that the earth can offer to us as humans. So that's just one example. Now, you might think of that with the stream. Something that I did pretty recently with my partner was we did a hand washing ritual. And this is something that I learned from a teacher a couple years back. It was very memorable to me. It felt really good physically. And the basics behind it is it's like you're just doing a little bit more of an intentional hand washing as a symbol of releasing something or of like getting rid of a burden, shedding a burden. So I was doing this to my partner, and the final instruction for that ritual is to return that water, that quote unquote dirty water, to the earth. Return it to a stream, put it in your garden, put it somewhere where water is needed. So we just happened to be right by the river, and we poured that water back into the river once we were finished with the ritual. That is an offering. And yet again, there might still be some people listening to this thinking, okay, but like, what does that do? Physically, nothing, but spiritually, a lot. It lets the earth, it lets the natural elements that you're working with know that you're there and know that you are thinking about it and know that you are giving something in return for what it gave you. That's what she essentially means when she's talking about bringing an offering to a natural element. So again, if you're drinking water from a stream, if the land is offering you clean, fresh water, that is one way to return the favor. If that spirituality aspect doesn't really speak to you, we could also think about this as, you know, if you are gathering elements from the natural world, you are acting in reciprocity by protecting those parts of the natural world. So protecting the water, donating to like water cleanup, organizations. Or if you rely on a natural environment, if there's a place in the woods that you like to walk around in and you find a lot of solace there, then an offering that you can make to that space is pulling invasives. I just did that the other day with my partner as well. We were pulling Ailanthus, otherwise known as Tree of Heaven, which is super detrimental to the environment. And once you know what those little saplings look like, you see them fucking everywhere. That is one small thing that you could do as an offering to the natural environments that you surround yourself in. Okay. I think I've made that point clear. I just wanted to mention that because when I first came across that little section that I read, I was a little confused too. I was like, well, what does it mean to offer something back in return to a quote unquote non-living thing? Which we could also get into, but I won't for right now because we haven't even gotten to the main point of today's episode and we are 20 minutes in. But let's talk about, at least for now, a starting list of the 5 main reasons why we need to practice reciprocity. So, number 1 is something that I think we have gotten ourselves into a little bit of a cultural, societal wormhole with this line of thinking. And reciprocity serves as a beautiful way to undo the damage that we have done in thinking this way. So, reason number 1 is because humans are not bad. We are a part of this natural ecosystem. I have said this time and time and time and time again, and I will continue to say it time and time again. I will scream it from the rooftops anywhere I go, everywhere I go, to anybody who ever knows me or meets me. At some point, I am probably going to get on my soapbox about the fact that humans are nature. We are not separate. But for some reason, we have societally grown up, established our little bubble to think that we are superior to other natural things in our world. And we're not. We are equal. We are an equal part of this system being living things, this system being nature. We are part of that. And it's so weird, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword. I don't know if that's exactly the right euphemism that I want to use. Maybe I want to use like oxymoron. Doesn't matter. I find it very interesting how humans see themselves as quote-unquote superior. Like, we are the most important living thing on this planet. There are tons and tons and tons of people who feel that way and act that way. Maybe even if you don't feel that way, you act that way, right? But at the same time, there's a huge discourse, definitely since we have come to realize that the earth is in danger and it is largely our fault, or I should say our system's fault, for polluting the environment, polluting the air, polluting the water. You get the idea. Climate change is largely a human issue. We started this. We caused this. Therefore, it has become very popular to think that humans are a plague upon the earth. We are bad. We are not worthy, and that we only cause harm. This is not true. We, like every other living creature on this planet, are capable of causing harm, yes, but also of mending, also of repairing. And the really incredible thing about being human is that we have these big old brains that can empathize and can forgive and can mend, like, with our words and our actions. Like, we have the ability to make an action plan and reflect on the mistakes of our past. That's incredible. Like, that is a human superpower, which, again, I'm not trying to say that we are superior to other living things, but we have the ability to right our wrongs. And not a lot of other living creatures have the innate ability to do so. They just are there, you know? So this is a really cool thing. And this is something that we can use for good. This is something that we can use to make things better. I think the hardest thing about breaking the cycle of just thinking that humans suck and are terrible is literally reframing that language. Because part of what this also gets into is somewhat of a side conversation, another thing that I have talked about more so in the blog recently, but this also plays into the loneliness epidemic, right? Because when we grow up and when we are surrounded by the rhetoric that like humans are at fault and that humans ruin everything and that we suck, and we start to beat ourselves up over it, we start to lose faith in one another, we lose faith in ourselves. All of this creates a downward spiral, right? Because it not only makes us feel as though, you know, we caused all of this and now there's nothing we can do, like we're doomed. It also builds a really strong distrust in other people, because if you lose faith in humanity, as so many people often say, then you do, even just with your words, you lose a sense of connection, even with people that you do enjoy, even with your local community. It's like if you keep telling yourself, if you keep giving yourself the messaging that humans are terrible, we're ruining everything, then you move about the world in that same way. And you treat your interactions with strangers and maybe even people that you do know and are friends with and spend a lot of time with, you treat others as if we are inferior and that we are bad, right? So it all goes back to that idea. When we start to understand reciprocity, when we start to understand exactly what Robin Wall Kimmerer is saying in this book, but not just what she's saying, like what reciprocity actually is, we start to understand that we as humans have a part to play in this dynamic. If we did not believe that we could reciprocate goodness out into the world, then there would be an end to that cycle. There would be no goodness. Like, it takes our collective power to bring that about. I hope that makes sense, but that's really like the first thing that comes to mind about starting to understand this concept. Reciprocity means that we have a role to play, and it is a crucial one. So the very, very, very first step, I think, in truly understanding this, and not only understanding it, but then starting to live it out, is to stop telling yourself that humanity is bad, or that humanity is doomed, or that you've lost your faith in humanity, because we also have just as much potential for good as we do for bad. Anything that we have done wrong, any mistakes that we have collectively made in our past with our systems, and yes, I know that there are so many, it's like overwhelming and disgusting, but any potential that we have to do bad things, we also have to do good things. Any bad decisions that we have made, any horrible choices that we have carried out, and I'm not just saying we personally, I'm saying we as a society, humanity. We also have the ability to reflect and repair. We have to believe that, otherwise reciprocity does not work. So that's the first step. And that is the first reason why we need to understand what that means. Number 2, and this flows in quite nicely with number 1, but number 2 is that if we start to understand and practice reciprocity, we also begin to see all living things, not just humans, all living things, not just animals, all living things as important, because they are. They are more important than the arbitrary stories that we also societally have grown into. Again, going back to the idea that humans are more superior than any other life form, than any other animal. When we drop that story, and when we greet the tree in our backyard, and I don't mean literally going, "Hello, tree, good morning, how are you?" I mean acknowledging that it's there. Maybe starting to take your morning walk with new eyes, seeing things that you pass by every day, but actually giving them a little bit of attention and noticing them and sending a little love their way. Maybe you don't even have to go that far, but just putting on a new lens. That in and of itself is a way to start building the capability of seeing all living things as important, because so often another, I guess, sort of human flaw is that we don't notice what's there until we don't have it anymore. We say this as a cliche all the time. We don't know what we've got until it's gone, right? Now, it's not necessarily healthy to live with that affirmation in our head all the time, but it is an important reminder from time to time. I think about one little anecdote from my childhood where I was very young, so I think it affected me pretty deeply. It was kind of like one of my first memories, but I used to have this really, really big tree in my backyard, and there was a swing on there, like a baby swing. And I would swing on it, and I would play on the tree. I would climb the tree, hang out there. I think I had a sandbox under that tree, so I just spent a lot of time there. And then I went to a babysitter's also, so not near my house, but a couple, neighborhoods away. And I remember coming home one day and that tree was gone because it was too close to the power lines. So my mom explained to me, they had to take the tree down because it was getting in the way of the power lines. And so then that tree was gone. And I might be a little fuzzy on this. I was literally like 3 years old, but I really think that affected me deeply. I'm pretty sure I cried for quite some time about that tree no longer being there. And of course, maybe it wasn't just the tree, but also the fact that I didn't get to say goodbye. That was also my first lesson in that little cliche that we don't know what we have until it's gone. I never really appreciated that tree until it wasn't there anymore. And then, so funny that I'm saying this because yet again, I think this is maybe a pattern that follows me in life, but I moved into my grandmother's house in 2021 and she died, I think 3 months before we officially moved in, somewhere around that time. In between that time, when she passed away and when we moved in, there was a beautiful tree in her front yard that they had to take down because it was getting into the pipes underground. So sad. And yes, of course I mourned that because I enjoy my trees. Maybe that struck something in my inner child. And honestly, I didn't really associate the two until I just talked about it just now, but you get my point. It is something that we take for granted. Nature, I mean. It's something we take for granted. So something that we can do to start understanding reciprocity, even if we're not actively practicing the act of reciprocity every single day, we can just lend our natural environment our attention. We can take our walks and say, I hear the cicadas right now. That's so lovely. It's making me very nostalgic. Or we can watch the ducks cross the road and be like, oh my God, so cute. All those little ducks crossing the road. It could even be as simple as people watching. This doesn't have to be necessarily with the natural environment. This is also with other humans. Sitting on a park bench, watching what other people are doing as they walk by. Maybe if somebody looks a little bit lost and just asking if they need help finding where they're going. That's a way to start interacting a little bit more with our local environment. And again, it is a way to reinforce all living things being important in our world because they are. We are not special. I mean, we are, but we are no better than other people or other things, other living things. You know what I mean? So that's number 2. Number 3. This is a big one. And this is something that I think is so critically important to start thinking about if we haven't already been thinking about it, just because of all the things that I said at the beginning of this episode, where we're living in some scary times. We are living in a time where people won't speak to each other because they have different views. And this is for all sides of the political spectrum. I don't say both sides, I say all sides. I don't care what you believe in. I don't care who you're voting for. I am talking to you because we all have work to do here. Now, I want to also give the caveat, because I will also scream this from the rooftops until the day I die. So long as what somebody is doing or saying is not hateful or harmful, I personally do not give a shit what they do or believe in. So long, again, as they are not being hateful towards a group of people or things or harmful. But here's the thing. There are a lot of things that people do and or say that a lot of people take more personally than they need to. A lot of people hold on to the feelings that it gives them when somebody says something that they fundamentally disagree with. And I think we could all stand to get a lot more nuanced and a lot more attentive to our own reactions to the things that people say or do. Because if it does not affect you personally, if it does not affect your life in any meaningful way other than maybe just temporarily hurting your feelings or making you think, then it's not really a big deal. It's a little problem to have. So, all of that being said, number 3 in practicing reciprocity and why we need to do this, why this is important, is because when we understand reciprocity, when we understand our duty to one another as people and as natural living beings, our walls can come down. We will begin to see everyone, even people that we disagree with, even people who are on the complete opposite side of the political spectrum to us, even people who live their lives entirely different from the way that we live our lives. We will start to understand them as somebody who is just trying to do the right thing. Because most people are. Most people just want to do the right thing. Most people just want life to work out. And maybe sometimes it's a little bit more individually focused than we would like, because not everybody has learned reciprocity. Not everybody understands what that is and why it's so important. Yes, there are people out there who are only in it for themselves. They're only looking out for themselves or those who are the absolute closest to them, immediate family, best friends. We'll get to that. But in general, we start to see that everyone, mostly everyone, is just doing the best that they can with the resources and the knowledge that they have. This comes in with a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, and I understand that. But that's part of the work, is just recognizing and like pausing sometimes. I cannot tell you. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, I think. Maybe I'm preaching to myself, I know, because every single day still I will get on the internet and see something abhorrent and something terrible that other people are doing that I'm like, why are you doing that? Why do you believe in that? Why are you saying that? You're a horrible person. But I have to stop myself. And I think, again, this is the work. This is the hard thing. We have to pause and even just for a minute, reflect. Maybe that person has been misguided. Maybe the only news outlet that person watches is one that that fearmongers and spreads hate. Maybe that's all they know. Maybe that's all they've been told to use to know. And that's okay. In a way, that's not their fault. Some people are not equipped to be doing all of this immense, deep reading and research. And some people won't even after you ask them to, because either they don't know how or it's just not in their life mission. And you know what? Like, that can be an issue, sure. But like, at the end of the day, just let it go. Because again, if whatever they are doing or saying is not actively hateful or harmful, then just like let it be. Let it be. Because there's too much else going on for us to worry about every individual action or thought that another person has. There's just too much else going on. Worry about yourself and worry about your own reaction. We can only do, or we can only control what we do, right? We can't really control whether or not that person goes and like gets a more educated source or reads the thing that we ask them to read. We can't control that. All we can do is offer it to them. And that's enough. You've done your job because you can't control anything else that they do. So anyway, the hardest part of this work, the hardest part of reciprocal thinking is sometimes acknowledging that we do have to send love and associate with people that we fundamentally disagree with. Because if we want reciprocity to work, if we want to live in a reciprocal nature, then they also deserve that reciprocal energy from us. It's not exclusionary. It's not only for some. It is for everybody. That is how a reciprocal society works. And the final thing that I'll say on this section, number 3, is, again, and I don't like to get too political in this podcast. It's not really what I'm here to do, but I would be lying if I said that this was not a really large part of my brain space right now. And I'm sure it is for many, because as you all well know, as 99% of my listeners live in the United States, we're coming up on an election season, and it is a very, very unprecedented one. That just reminded me, I saw like a tweet or something a few weeks ago that was like, can we just have one precedented event at some point in time? Can we just have one precedented event? I am so tired of the unprecedented. Anyway, obviously there's a lot at stake, but part of why this election is so terrifying is because we have really steadily and in the past couple of years really severely gotten ourselves into a state of political polarization. And I say it's severe because of what I said just a few minutes ago. Like, you very often see people stop talking to each other, or stop being friends with people, or stop associating with their own families because of differing views. Again, a lot of nuance goes into this conversation. We have to set boundaries where we have to set boundaries. But what I'm saying is, if we want that to stop, if we want the polarization to subside, and I believe it needs to, otherwise we are furthering down the path of discontent and distrust in one another, and it's just not a good look. It's not good. We have to be able to work together, right? So if we want that pattern to stop, we have to start hearing one another again, even if it is uncomfortable, even if we don't like it, even if we don't agree with it, even if we are dead set on the fact that the other person is wrong or misguided or stupid or ignorant. Like, we have to drop those labels and just fucking listen. You know? I'm gonna keep repeating the nuance thing, but I don't think I need to keep repeating that. Yes, there are situations in which this is not tolerable and it shouldn't be tolerated. But for the most part, like, think about this. We get so pent up online. We get so heated in the comments and in like internet debates where we're not face to face with people. But how often is it that you actually like sit down with a person who you fundamentally disagree with and just talk and listen, even if it gets uncomfortable? How often does that happen? I would believe not nearly as often. So, reciprocal nature in an aspect where we would not typically give that person our love, we would not typically give that person our attention. It's worth trying, because I think it's more common than we may currently believe that if we really just got to the bottom of an issue with somebody who is equally able to meet you in a balanced and like decent conversation, there's probably going to be common ground there. There's probably going to be something that you can conclude with and walk away feeling a little bit better about. And that comes with believing that the other person can meet you, right? If you immediately go into a conversation, or not even, if you immediately approach a person or the idea of talking to a person with, oh, well, he's not going to listen to me, or they're not going to listen to me, they only want to say what they want to say, they're not interested in actually listening, then you haven't even given them a chance. If you have, and if you've tried to have conversations with them again and again and again, and it hasn't led itself to anything productive, that's a different story. But we cannot approach this work by automatically assuming that the other person is not going to listen or not going to hear us, because then it won't work. Then we'll never do it. Expect the best from people. This is something that I talked briefly about in my episode with John Belmont a couple months ago. If we want to assume the best in other people, which is part of this work, we have to imagine them as complexly as we know our own lives are complex. We have to imagine that that person has an equally deep sense of their own lived experience. we have to assume that that person is coming up with what they're saying based off of their own lived experience, just as we would, because they are. Like, that's the thing. We're really not that different, even if we fundamentally disagree. If we all trained ourselves to have these conversations a little bit more, if we all trained ourselves to stay when things got uncomfortable, then we would be more able to practice reciprocity with people who we might not immediately right now think deserve it. I hope that makes sense. I hope that's not super rambly, but just to bring it all back, number 3, our walls will come down if we start approaching our world with reciprocity. Okay. Number 4, we regain trust in our communities. We regain trust in our environments. And in some cases, most importantly, we regain trust in ourselves. If we are able to understand reciprocity and maybe not practice it every single second of every single day, but bring it back into our center, remind ourselves of reciprocity as much as we can, practice it as much as we can actively do, then we are effectively calming our nervous system. And the more people who jump into this work, the more of the collective nervous system is calmed. Before I go any further with that, I want to clarify what I mean by the collective nervous system, or even the nervous system in general, because as we know, in wellness spaces, there are a lot of buzzwords, and I think that the quote-unquote nervous system is the newest in that list. So when I am speaking on this, I am speaking about a sense of calm, a sense of regulation, because we naturally, just by the state of the way things are right now, we kind of go about our day anxiously. Most of us, we go about our day distrustful of other people and of the world around us. We go about our day kind of burying our heads in the sand, doing what we need to do, doing our jobs, getting paid, doing the chores, living in a routine so that we stay safe. And if we practice reciprocity multiple times over, we start to really put it into our nervous system. We start to put the idea of reciprocity into our body, into our minds. And by that, I just mean like literally practicing it. Then we begin to trust that world around us more, because 9 times out of 10, when you do something nice for somebody else, they are going to respond well. At minimum, they are going to respond well. They are going to say, thank you. They're going to say, oh my God, thank you. That was so nice of you. Or I really appreciated that. I really needed that. You're going to get some level of feedback that feels good to your body. The more that you do this, the more you begin to see, oh, okay, the world is good. I did something. I got even just the tiniest little reward for it. And that feels good. Okay, I can trust this. I can do this again. I can do this more often. And then it's going to feel even better. I'll bring this back to kind of the natural world for a second. The more often you practice reciprocity in nature, i.e., kind of giving an offering wherever you go, just sending out your thanks and your gratitude into the world. You don't even have to say anything, just walking around being like, these trees are beautiful. Thank you for being here, you beautiful trees. That lends itself to noticing more of the beautiful things that surround you. And that feels good. So by practicing this reciprocal act of appreciation, of gratitude, of goodness, doing nice things, we make the world safer for other people and for ourselves. And that, in effect, calms the collective nervous system. We all get a little bit more relaxed because over time, things are a little bit more trustworthy. Other people are a little bit more trustworthy. We see the world as a safer place. Again, this takes mutual effort. This takes many, many, many people in a community, if not all people, practicing this. But even just within ourselves, if we practice it, if we remember it, then that alone does a little bit of magic for us. That does a little bit of the calming that we so desperately need. At least I do. I don't know about y'all, but I do. And if we need one final example in this section, I think of this a lot like going through a really hard time in life. I'm comparing it to a situation. Let's say, I don't know, you've gone through like a pretty harsh depressive episode, right? But you got through it. And now maybe you're removed enough from that period of time where you can look back on it and say, holy shit, I survived that. I don't want to do it again, but I could do it again because I survived it the first time. You know? And the next time that it happens, if it does, God forbid it does, but if it does, you know that you will get through it because you've been there before. I think of that pretty similarly to, practicing reciprocity, therefore practicing putting trust into the world. You've been there before. You know that it exists because it has happened before. So relish in that. Continue to practice it, and it will continue to come back. It will continue to get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger until your life is reciprocal with all other life. That's like the biggest gift we could possibly grant ourselves, and it is within our reach to do. It's not always going to be perfect because, of course, not everybody is going to jump on to this practice. Not everybody is going to know it. But hey, if you want people to know it, talk about it. Share this. Let other people know that this is possible because it is, and it's really not even hard. It's kind of incredible. Which brings me to the final reason for now. I know that there are so many other reasons that we could come up with for why we should be practicing reciprocity, but the last one that I want to mention, at least for right now, is that in doing this work, in practicing this, we receive mutual benefit as an individual, which is kind of similar to what I just said, but I want to hone in on the fact because a lot of this work involves thinking about others, but it's not about putting others first necessarily. That's a very altruistic thing to do. I'm not suggesting that you don't do it, but you don't necessarily want to go into this practice thinking this is for them. This is for other people. This is for my partner. This is for my family. This is for nature. This is for whatever. No, it's also for you. This is for you. This is work that is going to improve your life. Yeah, it's going to improve other people's lives, but it's going to improve your life too. For the reasons that I just gave, right? Because when we practice this, people respond positively, but a lot of times that's kind of just the first step. Somebody will respond well, somebody will say thank you, but eventually you are going to receive the act of reciprocity. You are going to see the good things that you are putting out in the world coming back to you. That takes practice to notice as well, but if you are the friend who, I've been seeing this trend lately, if you are the friend who will happily drive somebody to the airport, even if it's out of your way, even if you're already kind of busy, if you're the friend that's like, no, I love you, dude, and I want to do this nice thing for you, so yes, I will absolutely drive you to the airport. No, you don't have to pay me. Don't worry about it. Not an issue. If you're that friend, you're going to receive more people in your life who will also do those things for you. If you are the friend that they can go to when they need to just like cry about something or rant about something or just need company, then you can also expect that because you've given it. Now you have shown that you can also receive it and that you will happily receive it. That's part of the work too, right? Is almost full circle here, going back to the first idea, which is that humans are bad. This idea that humans are bad can often get stuck in our nervous systems, get stuck in our bodies, and make us feel unworthy of good things. I want us to also try to unlearn that, because we are worthy of good things, especially if we are actively trying to put good out into the world. Of course, you are worthy of good things. Of course you are. Of course you are. So you receive mutual benefit, but you have to be willing to receive that mutual benefit. And that in and of itself can be kind of hard work to do. Learning to accept, learning to break down the walls, learning to not see yourself as this destructive, horrible human, because you're not. You are nature. You are perfect. You are doing your best, just as everyone else is, for the most part. But we won't get into that. There you have it. That's reciprocity. That is our mutual duty to one another. And I really want to thank you guys for sticking it out if you've been here this long. As I've said, am really, really putting this at the core of my work right now, because it is so important to me, and it's just becoming more clear by the day that we need more of this. So if you enjoyed it, spread it around, share it with a friend, chat about it, send this episode, send other resources. I'm going to do my best to put a couple links in the show notes of ideas or like other places that you can go to for similar information. Obviously, Braiding Sweetgrass will be in the description. I did also want to mention, if you've gotten this far, that my next blog post, which is coming out a week from today, once this is posted, is going to be a review about the book. So I'm very excited. I haven't done a book review in a while, but like this is the next one. And it just makes so much sense to me to put that in there, because it's going along with so much of what I've been talking about recently. And I also just love it. So if you're interested, you can check that out when it comes out. If you want an update, if you want to, be reminded that that's out, you can follow me on Instagram. Again, all the links are in the show notes. I won't go too much into that. What I will go into is our finale for today's episode, and we finish every single episode in this way. If you've been here before, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't, here it is. We're going to play We're Not Really Strangers, which is a sweet, cute little card game, and it asks vulnerable questions. That's it. I have the healing expansion pack of this game, and that's what we pretty much always pull from. So your job for right now is to just listen along if you feel, or if you have a journal nearby, you can go grab that, and this could serve as just like a little journaling prompt. So here we go. Let's talk about healing. What are we going to talk about today? Ooh, a new one. What's one thing, big or small, you are most looking forward to? What about it excites you the most? Ooh, okay. Here we go. And I like this question too, just because it's kind of like, it's centering on joy. It's centering on something just like sweet and nice, which I feel like we haven't prioritized in a while. So one thing, big or small, that I am looking most forward to. For me, oh gosh, I mean, there's a lot actually right now. I was putting out some things on my calendar. I'm trying to get better about using my calendar, and I didn't realize, but I have 4 different concerts coming up in the next 2 months. The next one that I'm going to, which I actually will have gone to by the time this comes out, is Justice. And I'm so excited. Funny thing is, if you know who Justice is, I hope you do. They did the DANCE song way back in 2007. So it's very millennial core. It's very MySpace core, but they are so much fun. If you don't know who Justice is, definitely go look them up. They just came out with a new album. Tame Impala is all over it. It's super fun, just electronic rock dance music. Anyway, I'm going to that show on Sunday, the day before this will come out. And before that, we're going river tubing for 4 hours. So it's going to be a really jam-packed day, but it's going to be a really beautiful, nice weather day. And I am just very excited to go to a concert. I haven't been to a concert in quite a while. For me, I'm going to dance my ass off. I'm going to like dress really cute for it. I don't know what I'm going to wear yet, but it's going to be cute because, you know, you got to do it. And then, yeah, the cool thing too is that some of our friends that we're going tubing with are also going to the concert with us. So it's just going to be like a really long, jam-packed day full of really fun things. And it's summer, so I really couldn't ask for more. You know? Love that. Yay. Can't wait. What about you? What are you looking forward to? I would love to know. If you feel like sharing, you can drop that as a comment. If you're listening on Spotify, there's that little feature. You can also just DM me on Instagram. I absolutely love hearing from you all after these episodes. I want to know what lands for you. I want to know your thoughts. I want to know if you have any feedback or questions or further comments. Like, send it my way. Seriously. It means the world to me just to hear that you even listened and that whatever, you liked it. I don't know. Thank you so much for being here. Truly, I love you. I love you. I love you. Hope you're doing okay. And we will talk in 2 more weeks. I have a couple more guest episodes coming out before the season ends, and I'm so excited. So stay tuned, and we'll chat soon. All right. Bye.